Okay, so you want to start it off?
Sure. So tell us your full name and when and where you were born.
Well, let's see. My full name is Charles Francis Murphy. I was born in Chehalis, 18 January of 1933, and I do know that I was named for my grandfather with the same name. And soon after I arrived, my dad moved my older brother and I, older brother Larry. His name was Lawrence Talbot Murphy, Talbot being my grandmother's maiden name. And Dad moved from Chehalis to Olympia. So I arrived in Olympia in 1935. And soon thereafter, Dad divorced our mother, and Larry and I went to Aberdeen to live with grandparents. And we arrived in Aberdeen in, I guess it would be in 1935, until he remarried in 1939. Larry and I remained with our grandparents. The only thing that I recall from that time period is I believe her to have been a great grandmother. This is my grandmother's mom, arrived there in that home, and she was frail, elderly, and sickly, and she was in bed all the time, and she died in 1939, the very same time period that Dad remarried. And his new wife was Ann Northrop. And Larry and I moved to Elma, where Dad had purchased a home, and he was working with Standard Oil Company in Elma. And that's where we moved to. And I remained there in school until graduating high school in 1950, of all things.
Oh, what was your grandparents' name that you lived with?
Well, as I say, my grandfather was the person I was named for. So his name was Charles Francis Murphy. His wife was Edna Hester Talbot Murphy.
And then the one that was sick in bed, your great-grandma?
And I'm struggling to bring her name to mind.
Okay.
It may have been Josephine, but I'm struggling to be accurate without going into records. Yeah. So anyway, that gets me all the way to Elma and graduated from high school.
What year did you graduate?
1950.
1950. Wow. So did you do any sports in high school or anything?
Well, I was not an athlete. My older brother Larry was the athlete of us two, and he lettered in all the sports freshman year all the way through senior high school. I was quite frustrated that I didn't seem to be an athlete. I tried to play football, but that didn't work out very well. So I decided if I can't play the sport, I'll be a manager. So I was the manager of both football and basketball for several years, which for me allowed me to watch all the games and participate in that fashion. And I had friends that were athletes, so I maintained my friendship with several of the fellows.
Did you know any of the Travers?
The which?
Any of the Travers? My family, there was
the Travers.
Charles Travers, Dwayne Travers, Marilyn Travers, Don Travers. They all were in Elma and Dawson.
Well, the Travers name does kind of sound familiar, but I'm not recalling them. I don't know what years they were in there. I mean, I was there from, World War II time period in the 40s up to 1950. So if they were there in that time period, I would have known them, but I'm not recalling. Anything?
Yeah. What about your other grandparents on the other side of your family? Can you tell us about them?
Well, when my dad divorced my true biological mother, her name was Mildred Caroline Gerwig, Gerwig, like the current movie star, or film star, Greta Gerwig, I think. I'm not sure of the relationship, but in any event, when my dad divorced our mother, there was hardship and hard feelings. So I never knew any of that family. I can't describe anything about them. And I only know on one occasion when I was about age 40 that I met my true biological mother one time.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was it. So I have virtually no contact with any of that side of the family. Rightly or wrongly. I think wrongly, because I think over the years I've learned if you don't burn those bridges, that I think it helps the family to
Mhm.
understand what the heck. But in our case, it didn't work out that way at all,
So
much to my disappointment.
So when you met your mother, do you want to tell us about that? How that went?
Well, unfortunately, my memory of what exchanged there is pretty fuzzy. I mean, it was awkward, uncomfortable. She was sickly in a bed in Centralia, as I recall. And the visit lasted probably only half an hour. At that time, I was married to my wife, Terry. I called her Teresa, which is her given name, and had asked her to go with me to go visit the mom, but she decided that it was for me alone. So I'm,
That's probably
I'm
a good call.
yeah, I'm just not remembering any of the conversation. I regret that I didn't go back to see her, but that was the way it worked out.
Do you have any other brothers and sisters?
Well, when my dad remarried, he had a whole new family. He, during the war years, would be my brother Mike, Brooks, Pat, and a sister Kelly, and they were all my siblings, but all half siblings.
What happened to them?
Well, let's see. Of our family, my brother Larry, who I've mentioned, he died quite young. He died just before Mount St. Helens blew in December of 1979. Brother Mike has been gone about 12 to 15 years. Brother Brooks still lives in, where is it, Eastern Washington. And Pat lives in Yelm. And my sister Kelly is in Mesquite, Nevada.
Oh, wow.
So those.
So how was your stepmom growing up? What was that like?
I'm sure it was tough on her as it was tough on Larry and I, because uh, here she arrives in a family with our ages would have been 6 and almost 8. My older brother was about a year and a half older than I, but I think it was a fairly smooth adjustment. When she had her own family, again, I've mentioned brothers Mike, Brooks, Pat, and sister Kelly. Uh, it was pretty apparent that she was devoted to them.
That makes it hard.
Yeah,
So did you have a nickname growing up?
I don't think so. No, other than my Charles gradually followed what my grandfather called himself. That's Charlie. So I think to all of my friends that knew me, they were calling me Charlie. Some folks that didn't know me very well would say Chuck, but that's not really what I used.
So tell us about your friends. Were they, good influence on you? Were they bad influence?
Well, I had a couple pals growing up, through the Elma school system. I'll mention their names. Neither of them are still living, much to my sorrow. The best one would be Russ Watkins. He was a good athlete in all the sports, and he and I stayed friends all the way through school and after, we graduated and on through the years. And sadly, he passed away. I think it was just this past year. Who else in Elma? Well, I mean, I had several friends, but Russ Watkins was probably the best that I can think of.
So what was your first car?
Growing up, I never developed a taste for cars. I understand one of you likes cars a lot,
Yeah, I'm a truck girl.
but I wasn't one of those. I guess I got that from my dad. You know, he had several trucks that he used in his business, and he didn't know squat about them. And I've never seen him raise the hood of a car. And I think I picked that up readily. I've never raised the hood of a car either. I don't know anything about them. But my first car, when I finally got out of high school, I was going to college at St. Martin's, then a college, now the university. I bought a car from one of my fellow students. I think it was a 1939 Nash, as I recall. And it got me from St. Martin's on weekends back to Elma, where I could get my clothes washed and rejuvenate. But that was my first car, and it lasted quite a while. After several years, I sold it to my wife's younger brother, John McCatton. And I don't know what he did.
Is that the car that you and Terry were on dates with, or?
I'm not recalling if we dated in that car or not. We were intermittent, going steady in high school. She was a year behind me in the high school. And after I graduated, we kind of went different ways. She went into nurses training, eventually in Seattle, and I went off in the military. But apparently that absent made the heart grow fonder, and we decided that we better get together. And so we ended up marrying in August of 1955, the very month and almost to the day that I graduated from a Air Force program that got me into aviation.
Oh, so how long were you in the Air Force?
Well, active in reserve for probably about 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
My dad was in the Air Force as well.
All right. Good for him.
Yeah, he was a pilot.
Yeah. Good for him.
Were you in the war?
Well, I mean, I started in 1955 after a year's long training. Was fortunate enough to be assigned to McCord, and from 1955 on, I participated in several skirmishes, I guess. When I was at McCord, we would fly regularly into the Pacific and Japan. Later, I was in reserves at McCord, and our unit was recalled when the Vietnam War was underway, and we flew missions into Vietnam. So those were interesting times. But my wife tells me I was never home because I was always flying. One of the things that I do recall with Uncle Sam, with the family, I was assigned to go out to Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. So we had the family with us, the oldest being Tab, and our second son arrived when we were living there in Honolulu. Hickam, as you may know, is located right adjacent to Pearl Harbor. So it was an interesting area to visit. I have a keen memory of Hickam, where being stationed there, they had concrete barracks, and a lot of them still had unrepaired machine gun hole marks from Pearl Harbor days of December of 41. And they didn't repair them purposely to remind people of that fateful day.
So what was your job in the war? Were you bombing people and?
Well, I was a navigator, and we were flying strategic airlift missions around the world, frankly, Vietnam and other places out in the Pacific. if there's a rock out on the Pacific that shows up above the water, I've been there. I mean, I can start to name them all, going,
Oh,
Gotcha.
after Hawaii, Kwajalein Island, Guam, Midway, Wake Island, and on and on.
Did you get any awards when you were, or medals when you were in?
Nothing for anything outstanding. No, just doing my job.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you ever
Yeah.
land your airplanes on the boats? Out
On an aircraft carrier,
Yeah.
no, that's Navy stuff, and
That's
we
Navy
didn't
stuff.
do that.
That's
No.
amazing.
But over time, both active and reserve with the military, which I enjoyed. And I admit, my wife says that I was never home. I accumulated about 8,000 hours of log flying time, which isn't a lot compared to commercial pilots who devote their entire life to flying. They get 25,000 hours. But for someone who was doing it part time, and I was flying probably 20 years as in reserves as a civilian flying, it was, it was a lot, I guess.
What airplanes did you fly? What planes?
Well, the first airplane that I found at McCord was a C-124. It's a 4-engine prop aircraft that weighed 185,000 pounds. It had clamshell nose doors opened up like that, and they would throw down a ramp and they could drive vehicles inside of it.
Oh, wow.
It was an interesting airplane. It had pretty basic equipment, but for a navigator, we had a radar set and other items, long range radio aid to RAM set and so forth. So, coupled with that and a sextant, we were able to find a way out across the Pacific pretty readily. Sometimes.
What year did you retire?
Uncle Sam pushed us navigators out, and I think it was about 1984 because everything had gone high tech, and they'd used little black boxes to replace the navigators. And they did that in commercial aircraft as well as the military, using little black boxes.
So you got replaced by a little black box.
Yeah, exactly. The inertial nav guidance system.
I never heard that before.
So
Wow.
did you use Morse code?
Well, it so happened that in my high school days, I had befriended a state trooper, or vice versa, who was a ham radio operator. And I became interested in ham radio. And through this friend, the state trooper, he taught me the code. So I knew Morse code when I went into training in the Air Force. And one of the classes that we had going through the navigator program was Morse code. And about the first day of that class, I said, well, I'm a ham radio operator. I had received my license and I could operate Morse code pretty readily. They said, fine, don't come back to class. You don't have to come to this class. So that was a good benefit. But in general flying, no, I didn't use Morse code at all. I mean, I knew it, but it wasn't anything that we used.
So were you guys stationed all over the world then when your kids were young?
Well, I was stationed principally at McCord,
The whole time?
which, well, until I was transferred out to Hickam for a couple of years. And at that time, I decided, as much as I enjoyed flying, that it was time to get back to school. And I had previously been at 20 years of age in law school at the University of Washington.
Oh, really?
After 3 years of pre-law at St. Martin's.
Oh, wow.
So I told the folks in the Air Force I sure want to go back to school, and they let me out. When was that? 1959. I got out of active duty at McCord. We flew back and ended up in Seattle, and of all places, Yesler Terrace, low-income housing, which was not only for students, but low-income folks. And that, for us, was our home for 3 years as I finished up law school, graduated in 1962.
Oh, wow. So where did you practice at? I didn't realize you were.
Well, after law school, I decided let's go to Olympia for 1 year with the state attorney general's office.
Oh,
And I made a career out of that. I stayed there for the greater part of 30 years.
oh wow.
And I worked for 4 separate attorneys general, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, which I've always felt that makes me kind of down the middle.
Down the
Like,
middle,
Yeah.
yeah.
I survived.
You survived both sides.
So what year did you retire from that?
Let's see, it would have been 94, I believe.
So what
Yeah.
kind of cases did you mostly do, or what was your job duties?
Well, at the time that I first started in the Attorney General's office, the office was relatively small compared to the way it is now. With, I think they have multiple hundred attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
They had about 62 attorneys, and we were each assigned to various state agencies, small, medium, and large, to handle all of their legal business. And that's exactly what I did for quite a few years, working with small to medium state agencies, dealing with all of their legal problems. Sometimes the problems got you into court. Other times we tried to work it such that we'd stay out of court and solve the problems. Along the way, I also took several years, I think it was about 4 years, that I was offered a job in labor industries as the supervisor of the industrial insurance program, which another label is assistant director of the industrial insurance division. I decided to take that job and found it very challenging for someone that had just been, doing legal work, because we had about, I think there were about 1,100 people involved at that time in the industrial insurance division, handling worker comp activities.
Wow.
That's what it was about. And after about 4 years, that came to an end, and I luckily had a friend in the AG office, and I called him and said, it's time for me to look around, to come back to the law. And they said, come on back. So I went back to the AG office, where I continued to work for several more years until I retired.
What year did you retire?
Well, let's see. I think I mentioned 94.
94. Yeah. Well, what was your first job?
First job, you mean before?
Before.
I mean, the very first thing I did in high school days, I worked in a local hardware store in downtown Elma, making 35 cents an hour.
Wow.
And of course, 35 cents seems like not much these days, but it would buy a few things.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the high school days, I also mowed lawns in the area. And I vaguely recall for a while, I used to set pins in a bowling alley just to make some money.
Oh, wow.
But those were things I did at the high school level. I'm recalling also that my dad kept my brother Larry and I busy in his business, which he was a Standard Oil wholesale distributor for Eastern Grace Harbor County. And that triggered back in the late 30s, all the way for probably 25 plus 30 years. And during that time period, he had several trucks that were delivering fuel products in to not only homes, but standard stations and farms. And he had my older brother and I participating in that activity, driving those trucks, which, which really helped, because when I was at St. Martin's, my dad was kind enough, knowing the Standard Oil people, to get me a job doing the same thing with Standard Oil, driving truck in the summer times. And that's what I did to help pay for the St. Martin's College.
So where was the oil plant at in Elma?
Well, I guess it's no longer existing. Do you know where the Mormon church is?
Yeah.
Well, it's about a block from there. It was a block from there. The Mormon church.
Going out of town towards the fairgrounds?
Well, not kind of towards the fairgrounds. Yeah, it was on the. I think it was kind of on that Stamper Road, or at least they call it Stamper Road. I don't know if I mean, the home that Dad had purchased was, how to describe it, was between that Mormon church facility, the Standard Oil plant, and the fairgrounds, and was up kind of on the hill to the left.
So were they drilling oil and refining it there, or what did they do there?
Oh no, they would bring in. They had huge storage tanks for the products, and they would bring it in and store it there, and then Dad trucks would distribute it out to, as I've
It
described.
must have came on the train delivery.
No, there were truck and trailer types. You still see them on the road
Okay.
hauling fuel oil products, gasoline products. That's what I mean. They would. I guess they would go to the refineries and bring the stuff right down to the storage tanks of Dad's Standard Oil plant, and that's the way it operated. You know.
And at that time, what did they use all the oil for? They were delivering.
Well, I mean, it was a mix of gasoline, therefore used for automobiles, oils for, I guess the mills and lubrication, all of that for industrial purposes.
Wow, and a lot of farms had tanks.
Exactly.
My grandma had one, and it was awesome to go to grandpa's to get gas.
Yeah.
So they would that's probably where it came from. They would ship it out.
That's exactly the way it worked. Yeah, I mean, for several years in a row, I distinctly recall filling up people's fuel oil tanks, for their home heating, or we would dump products at stations, and they had big tanks that were underground. We just pumped that stuff into there.
So when they left Elma, where did that go then? You think that would have been a big business to keep in Elma?
Well, I only know a little bit about what transpired, and I think it was the natural gas arrived, and that kind of cut into the business. And with the arrival of natural gas and the pipelines, the kind of work that my dad had done for Standard Oil seemed to kind of wind down.
Was that his only job growing?
Well, his job, of course, branched out. He was very active in civic affairs, so he was very busy with all kinds of things going on in Elma, the Kiwanis, the elk, the Kiwanis and Eagles. He was involved in school matters. He was involved in Boy Scouts. And then he got involved in local politics, becoming a county commissioner. So he did that all the while he was serving as Standard Oil wholesale distributor. And he combined those jobs until all of that wound down. To my surprise, brother Mike got involved in real estate. And believe it or not, he taught my dad how to get a real estate license. And Dad had a high school education and had never been, doing anything beyond that for years. So it was quite an accomplishment for Dad to get his license.
That's awesome.
And that's what he did for a while.
Was it what office did he work at?
I'm trying to think of the fellow's name that had an office in McCleary. My wife's giving me a hint that she knows.
Hodges.
Jim Hodges.
Jim Hodges, yeah.
Yeah.
So your dad worked for him?
A little while, yeah. A little while.
And then did he retire from real estate? Or did he go?
Yeah, he basically retired, wound down. He died somewhat soon thereafter, kind of young, I think. I think he was in his 60s, yeah.
He never worked in Elma at Century 21?
I don't recall that he did that, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall that he did that.
What's your earliest memory?
Well, I think I can recall being here in Olympia in 1935 because my uncle, this is Dad's brother Brooks, he had two brothers, Brooks and Frank, and his nickname was Pat Murphy. They were younger than my dad. And my Uncle Brooks used to say that he would see me in the yard as a probably a 3-year-old tied to a tree so I wouldn't get out in the street.
Seriously?
So,
He tied you to a tree?
well, I mean, like a dog on a leash. That's the way that
You were
I
tethered.
guess they were babysitting me.
Oh,
Anyway, I do recall that. Uh, I also have I also have several distinct memories, and one is of course, December 7th of 1941.
Mhm.
Lived in Elma. We'd been there, for a couple of years. We're at breakfast, and over the radio comes the news that Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor.
wow.
And it was very vivid in my memory because I could tell right away, at that time, what am I, 8 years old? I could tell the adults were all alarmed, and I
Yeah.
just knew it was not good, not a good thing. And little did I realize that some years later I'd be right there adjacent to Pearl Harbor,
Yeah.
stationed at Hickam.
Wow. No,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And what kind of music did you like?
Well, I was influenced, I think, by my dad's love of music, and he loved stuff like the current music back then, Bing Crosby, some of the performers. My wife's given me a hint. Oh, Louis Armstrong.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, when I was at St. Martin's, my dad called me from Elma and said, "Hey, would you like to see Louis Armstrong perform?" I said, "Well, sure, Dad." So he came up from Elma and took me to, I've forgotten the name of the area that's, kind of near St. Martin's and Lacey. And there,
Evergreen?
the Evergreen Ballroom. And there, Louis Armstrong performed, a huge crowd. And it was a special treat to
Yeah.
hear him perform. But I regret growing up that I never practiced any musical instrument ever whatsoever. I wish I had done that, but I found I didn't have an ounce of musical skill, so I didn't do any of that stuff. But I've enjoyed music over the years, just listening pleasant music.
Oh, classical?
Classical music, yeah, I just listen and enjoy that.
So how did you and Terry meet?
Well, she was a year behind me in Elma School. In growing up, they actually were somewhat neighbors of ours. I've mentioned that Mormon school and the Standard Oil plant, and within about 2 blocks of all of that, Teresa's dad, Mr. McCann, brought his family there. So they were kind of general neighbors in our area. And as I say, in high school days, we eventually started going steady, as they say, back in those days. But that was kind of intermittent. And once I got out of high school, we kind of went our separate ways for a while. But, lots of good memories back in that time period.
How did you know you guys were in love?
How did we know we're in love? Well, it must have been pretty strong when I was off. I headed off to the Air Force in training. Teresa was still going through nurses training. Maybe she'd graduated by then, close to graduating. And I was in Texas and realizing that maybe that was the one. So I purchased a ring. I didn't have much money. I didn't make any money as an aviation cadet, and we couldn't have any other job. We were busy. So I didn't, as I say, I didn't have much money, but I bought a ring and shipped it home as a token of our engagement. And I think you told me the story that your nursing friends were all pretty excited about that. So we then set the date. The date was going to be 27 August for our wedding, and several things happened. I graduated from this Texas training program, got commissioned as a second lieutenant, got wings on the 23rd of August. I came home ready to look forward to that wedding 4 days later. And I think it was within 48 hours, my grandfather died. The grandfather that I was named for, which threw a real dark cloud over things, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So my family asked Teresa to go sit with Grandpa. He'd had this stroke. He was in an Aberdeen hospital. He did not. He was not conscious. But the two of us went down there and sat with Grandpa until he expired, and he died during the night. We looked at each other and headed home. We went home and asked Grandma, who at that time was living next door to us in Elma, out east of Elma. And we went to Grandma and said, Grandma, should we cancel the wedding? And she said, oh, no, no. You children, you go ahead and get married. So we kept forward. But my wife speaks about the difficulty of all of that because we'd stayed up all night before. She had preparation to do before the wedding the next day. Anyway, it happened. We got married. There's one little side story about my wife driving away from the church because I had lost my license, a little skirmish.
What happened?
Well, it was the short story. It was a mistake on my part, but it was before I had gone down into Texas in the training in the Air Force, and so I didn't worry about the license. And but when after we were married, my wife didn't know much about the Murphy side of the family. We were determined to go over to Yakima to my grandfather's funeral, and that was quite I guess that was our honeymoon for again trying to get my wife acquainted with all of this family that she didn't know particularly. So we decided to forget all of that stuff and head to the beach. That was going to be our honeymoon. We headed to the beach out near, not Westport, but on the ocean shores. I guess that's where we were, somewhere in that area. And I'll be go to hell. My stepmother's mom died.
Oh my goodness.
And so we were saying, are we gonna interrupt all of this to go to another funeral? And we said, no, let's just stay here on the beach and forget that one. So we bypassed that one. Anyway, always a tough start. I would quickly want to mention thereafter we had our 5 children, and they've been a great joy. It was really fun. We enjoyed our 5 children, and each of them have their pluses, and it's been a real treat to have 5 children.
So they were all raised in this house?
Well, partially. We actually, before this house, we lived just south of the Capitol on South Water Street.
Oh.
I'm saying south of the Capitol. We were on South Water Street, and I think that's where we had all 5 of them there. When we moved here in 1975, I'm trying to recall, I think the oldest, Tab, was a senior in high school, I think. Yeah. And that was the year, as I'm remembering, that Olympia High split and Capitol High School started here in Olympia. And all of our children did go through the middle school. It's off through the trees here, and and then through Olympia High School. They all graduated over the years from Olympia High.
So what did you find challenging during your first years of marriage?
Well, I think it was a mix of the job that I had in the Attorney General's office, babies. I think at one point in time I was still flying reserve, and that seemed all of that were my choices, but there was a certain amount of stress involved in in lots of it. I'm remembering too, at one point in time, I was a participant in a reserve program down in Portland, at Portland International. We were flying, what the heck is that aircraft? The twin engine support aircraft located right at the Portland International Airport. And I would be, after work, driving down on weekends, flying with that unit, and their unit would fly across the state down to Texas, flying into Alaska and all of that. And once we'd get back to Portland, I'd be driving back and going back to work, and it was definitely a busy time.
Yeah, that would be. You must have been tired.
Yeah, I know the road, driving back and forth on that freeway.
What was the secret for staying together?
Well, let's see. I guess it must have been love. We had our 5 children, and we decided to stick it out.
So you just celebrated your 70th anniversary?
70th anniversary.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
in August.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
Long
yeah,
time.
yeah. Well, and it was a treat on a couple occasions. On our 50th, all 5 of our children surprised us by getting a limo out here at our front door, didn't tell us anything of what was going on, put us into the limo, and off it sped. And we were wondering what's going on. Well, the limo took us to the Benson Hotel in Portland, where all 5 of our children surprised us with, a great party.
I've been at the Benson. Yeah. That's a very nice.
That was on the 50th.
Very nice, yeah.
So we were kind of wondering, what are those smart guys going to do for us on the 70th? We'd heard nothing. I didn't. Of course, I'm the last to hear about anything of the family. And to our middle daughter, Tracy, who lives in the desert down in California, has had some health issues with the leg, and she's not been able to do much with this leg. It's been about 6 or 7 months long. The doctors have told her you can't fly, you can't drive beyond 100 miles. So we were not thinking that of all of our children, she's not going to show up. Right. So to our great surprise, the weekend before the 27th in August, slowly but surely out of the woodwork, here comes our 5 children, and including Tracy and her husband. And she was the last one we expected to see because of her health matters. Anyway, it was a great surprise and a nice occasion to have them all visit. And of course, that particular daughter, Tracy, she's a grandmother. She has her own 3 daughters here in Olympia with, let's see, one of them with children, Ashley Burke and Taylor. Well, 2 of them with children. And so we've got great grandchildren coming in, and these children, and so it was a special occasion again. Nice treat.
Awesome. So where was that party at?
Right here.
Oh, perfect.
Right in our home.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah. They arrived right here. So yeah, it was special.
What were your children like when they were little? Were they really good kids?
Well, that's certainly my recollection, but my wife says I was never home. So, uh, I think we enjoyed them all. I know our oldest Tab must have been about that high when I was transferred out of McCord to Hickam, and the Air Force sent us by train down in California, and we took I guess it would have been a match ship. Anyway, it was a Navy vessel out of California out to Hawaii. And little Tab was our then only child, and he traveled well. Quite a few of the adults on that vessel going across were seasick, and I'm not sure I did very well myself. But he held up quite nicely and had a great appetite. So when we were in Hawaii, our second son, Dan, was born. When we finally left the military and came back to Seattle, when I had returned to law school, our first daughter, Kathy, was born the day before first year exams. I remember that clearly. She was born in December. When we left Seattle to come to Olympia for 1 year, that was our big plan. That was in 1962. Two more daughters arrived here in the Olympia area. That was Stacy and Shannon. Shannon, our youngest. And here we are. How many years later? Quite a few years later. We seemed to like Olympia, and we stayed.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, we enjoyed. It's changed over the years, but I think for the good. Generally, for the good.
What were the holidays like when you were young?
Well, let's see. Are you speaking of now when I was married or prior to that?
Prior to that.
Prior to that, well, that would be in Elma. Although I do have vague recollections of some holidays, I guess, living with grandparents, but those are pretty fuzzy memories.
Did you go see Santa Claus or anything like that?
I'm not recalling a visit to any Santa Claus, but I mean, I think we had regular holidays at Elma when Dad remarried, and the new family started to arrive. There were traditional holidays at Christmas time and things like that.
Birthdays and Thanksgiving.
I'm not recalling too many parties about birthdays, but it may have happened.
Did you do Halloween?
I don't recall that either. Yeah. So one thing that sticks in my mind is neither my dad or my stepmother had gone to school after high school. They both graduated high school. Dad graduated in Centralia in, I think it was 29, as I recall. And he was an athlete and played football in high school. He was involved in civic government, student government. I think he was student body president in Centralia. Where am I going with all this? Once we got to Elma, with a new family, the Pat, Mike, Brooks, and Kelly arriving. By then, my older brother and I were getting, we were headed out the front door. So I can't say that I'm very close to the sister Kelly. She was the youngest of that group, but I still am quite close to Pat. He and I have played golf together over the years, and we socialize regularly. Brother Brooks lives in Leavenworth, so I don't see him all that often. Anyway, those are some of my memories.
What were the holidays like when your children were young?
Well, I think we strive to have celebrations for them. Yeah, birthdays, And I think my wife did a good job of celebrating birthdays with the children. And I know even though I was on the road quite a bit with Uncle Sam, my wife tells me, maybe I was there, I'm not recalling, we would take the children out to Catholic church out in Lacey and sit not necessarily in the front pew, but kind of close to the front. And our oldest daughter, Kathy, had a little beanie hat on with a rubber whatever to hold it on. And during the mass, and I think the priest out there was Father Ansgar. He was rather I can't call him strict, but he didn't seem to be overly friendly fellow. Anyway, he was saying the mass, and Kathy pipes up during the mass. This damn thing is cut my throat. And I think Father Ansgar looked back, gave the look back as if to say, hush that little child up.
Well, you said one of your daughters was born in December?
Let's see, that would have been Kathy, the oldest, born in December. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a December baby.
Oh, okay.
And I have a brother that's also December. And
yeah, good.
My mom made sure that my present was never wrapped in a Christmas paper, so that I could always have a birthday separate from Christmas. Because mine was
well, that's a neat idea.
Yeah,
that's a neat idea.
So I'm always when somebody says they're born in December, we're like, oh, when were you born? What kind of birthday did you get? Big presents and combined presents and stuff like that. So
So what were some of the hobbies that you did growing up?
Well, I think I've already mentioned ham radio. I picked that up in high school days, which I enjoyed doing that for quite a few years, even after high school. Even when I was stationed in Hawaii at Hickam, I had a ham radio arrangement there. But over the years, the kind of hobbies that stick in my mind, somewhere along the line, I'd picked up stamp collecting. So I'd done that for a while. That's been behind me now because I don't do that anymore. What other hobbies?
You like to read books?
Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah, I have so many books that I think that's my wife's pet peeve, that I have so many books that are downstairs. One of the hobbies, I guess I should mention, that after I stopped working, retired, I decided to spend a little time researching the family. I knew a little bit about things, but I didn't know a lot about them. One thing that got me inspired into researching the family is my brother Mike and his wife had gone to Ireland, and they did a typical touristy thing while over there, but they also looked up some, I'll call them distant relatives, through my grandfather. My grandfather's mom was Irish people named O'Reilly. So that was the connection. And when my brother Mike was in Ireland, he looked up some O'Reilly people. He found some that connected with our family tree. And when he got back to Olympia, he pulled his brothers together and said, okay, here's what I propose. He said, let's pool some money together, hitting us up for a little, funds. He said, let's pool some money together and bring those two O'Reilly Irish people to Olympia. And we said, hey, that's a great idea. So the two people I need to mention, one was Mari O'Reilly, an elderly lady about my age. The other was a young lady named Helen O'Reilly, who is a lawyer from Cork, Ireland. And once I picked up on all of that, I thought, hey, that'd be great. So sure enough, come to pass. We pooled some money together, paid the way over, and at that gathering, Mike set it all up mostly. He reached out as far as he could, the people that he didn't even know who connected with the O'Reilly family, and said, we're having an O'Reilly reunion at his home, which at that time was out on the water here in Olympia. And lo and behold, we brought the two Irish ladies over. And at that gathering, there was a retired Army general who connected with the O'Reillys. I can't even remember, Hackett is his name, connected with the O'Reillys. And he showed me a chart that he'd made. It was huge, like this. And his family was right in the middle, all kinds of O'Reillys. And over to the right-hand side were some Murphys. They were on this chart. And I was really, really interested in who are all these people. You know, a lot of these I've never heard of, didn't know anything about them. So I did devote quite a few of my time and energy after retiring to do research into the very common average family. And as I pushed back in time, I treated everybody equal, whether it be a branch of the side of the family, even though they weren't named Murphy or O'Reilly. I treated everybody equal. I wanted to learn about them, and I made multiple visits to National Genealogy Society annual gatherings. I made trips back to the East Coast, going to Kentucky, and I'd never been into Kentucky before. Going to Kentucky twice, the East Coast several times, and programs here in the Puget Sound area that were involved with genealogy. Up Tacoma had several. All the while pushing and shoving, trying to learn. And about that time, luckily, online, the computer stuff was taking hold, and they were bringing more and more and more details of information and records online. So I started tapping into that as well. And lastly, I also made two separate week-long trips to the Mecca of family history, and that's down in Salt Lake City at the Mormon Library.
Oh, you did.
Mm-hmm.
And that library, as you may know, is like a 4-story, huge library, which is superb to go visit. And the only way to do it properly, of course, is you plan ahead. You know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, you're getting snowed under and lost.
Yeah.
But I was determined that I was going to make some progress, and I really enjoyed those visits there. Anyway, through all of that, I had learned. I couldn't believe that there was a facility in Allen County, Fort Wayne, Indiana, a public library that would take submittals from amateur family historians, and they'd ship it out to a commercial binder, and they would duplicate it, I guess, and save one for their genealogy section, send one back to the submitter bound. It's bound, and they do that for free. And I couldn't believe that. So I finally decided, well, I guess I better ask them, do you really do that? And they replied, yes, we really do this. So I started sending them stuff. Now, the part that I enjoyed was getting a bound volume back of materials that I'd put together. But the part that was frustrating to me was the time it took for them to get it and send it out to their commercial binder and get it all back was getting lengthy. So I decided, I wonder if I can shortchange that. And I did. I decided to go directly to the binder. So I've got probably 15 to 20 volumes with my family history stored in that Fort Wayne, Indiana Public Library genealogy section.
Awesome.
And I've got some stored down in the the Mormon facility down in Salt Lake City, and I've got nearly 50 volumes downstairs.
Wow.
And if you're truly interested, I go show that out to you.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but,
I love that stuff.
that's, gradually over time, I realized I'm making up materials that aren't just pure family history, but it's materials that, like books I've read and current news. I mean, I'm interested, of course, in politics and things of that kind, world events. So I throw all that together and put it in a volume, even though it's not pure family history.
That's awesome that you do that. That's great. That's
Yeah.
a fun hobby.
Yeah, that's one of the things I need to mention, because I still do that a little bit. I don't do much hardcore research anymore, but I still do make those volumes, and it keeps me, I guess, keeps me active.
Right. So what else do you enjoy doing now? Do you guys go on vacations or?
Well, we don't travel a great deal anymore. I guess when our middle daughter Stacy had lived in Portland about 2 years back, we would enjoy going down to visit her and her family and her husband down there. And our daughter Shannon lived in Portland as well, so we would enjoy visiting down there. And of course, if in Portland, I would want to go to Powell's bookstore, which is, if you're not familiar with Powell's bookstore, it's like the Mormon library. It's multi-stored, huge bookstore, multi-leveled, off of in Portland, and it's a treat for book lovers to go browse their books.
Awesome. And you said you're both still driving too.
Still driving.
At 92?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. 92 and a half, I guess.
Are you guys really, really good drivers still?
Apparently, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think we're still good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Who drives the most?
I think it's equal, although my wife has lots of errands and she doesn't let me drive her Lexus, so I guess she drives more than I do.
So what are your hopes for your family? Like to pass it on the torch to the generation. You want somebody in the family to continue your search for the family? Or?
Well, I can answer that in a couple of ways. We have a grandson. We call him Little Charlie. He's not so little anymore. He's a freshman in high school. He's a swimmer, and I have great hopes for him that if he continues in that, he might be able to parlay that into, getting a scholarship in swimming and help him into college. Our oldest son Tab has 6 children. You may or may not know that. They're all Canadian citizens.
Oh, they are. Oh,
some of them have dual. Maybe they all have dual citizenship, but they all have been basically born and raised in Canada, where their mother resides. And each of them have very interesting lives. Tab's children. One of the boys, Luke, is on currently I'll call it a fast track to become a wealth advisor. I didn't know much about that world, but he's been working himself. He himself works in banking, and apparently this is a very exclusive category of banking people that advise people with wealth, and you can become certified to do that type of work, advise people with wealth, by going through several chairs and tests and whatever. And he is at the final level of doing that. And so I look forward to his long life and interesting career in that field. One of his daughters is interested in, I thought, I was crossing my fingers and hoping, interested in law, but no, she's swung away towards the arts and is interested in, I guess, filmmaking. And I think that's what she's studying back east, filmmaking. And one of the other daughters of our son Tab, she worked with the ballet in Victoria, and is kind of administrator of the ballet company up in Victoria, which she says doesn't pay much, but it's a very interesting job.
Yeah.
Let's see. As far as I'm not sure I'm recognizing any athletes coming along in the family, except for maybe let's see, Stacy's three daughters. One of them, Ashley Taylor, has one son. His name is River. And if there's any young fella, and he's about like this, a human dynamo, and if there's any young fella that has a future in the athletic world, he's it, because he's continually on the go, very active guy. Anyway, those are thoughts that come to mind.
So didn't Tab just get an award from Olympia? Something happened with his. What is he, a director?
Well, he had one shot at directing, but basically he's a writer.
Okay.
And over the years that he's done that down in Hollywood, he had about 12 years where he worked principally with Disney. And that brought him to the world of animation films. And he got first line direct credit for producing, I think there are 4 or 5, what the heck were the titles? Hunchback of Notre Dame. There were several other animated films. The Hunchback of Notre Dame was one of Disney's first, and they decided to pull out the stops and have a big soiree about it in New Orleans.
Oh, really?
And Tab invited us to go along, and so we flew to New Orleans. Here's Disney putting on this huge first run animated movie of Hunchback of Notre Dame in the football. I can't recall what its name is in New Orleans. It's where they play the NFL games.
Mhm.
Oh.
And the huge crowd.
That Saints Auditorium, is that what it is?
It was in the main football field,
Yeah.
and they had 4 screens up where they showed this film. Anyway, Tab told us later, he said Disney decided they're not doing that anymore, not spending all that money on showing it off. Anyway, he had good success over the years. His own movie, which was Last of the Dogmen, which he wrote and directed, and that starred Barbara Hershey and the other gentleman, blanking on his name now. Anyway, he's had an interesting time for someone, our families, no one that, connected to the arts world,
That's awesome.
connected with that world.
So have you watched every one of his movies?
Well, I'm sure
Even the
we have,
cartoons?
yeah, all of the animated products. And
What's your favorite?
well, I thought The Hunchback was great. I mean, we went down there and saw it premiered, and it was definitely interesting. Yeah.
So is the
Yeah.
name Tab short for something?
Well, yeah, our son was named after my dad. My dad, full name is Charles Talbot Murphy, Talbot being his mother's maiden name. Our dad revealed that when he got to school as a young guy, and I gather this would be in, I don't know if Centralia or maybe back in Kentucky where he's a young guy, kids teased him, started calling him Talbot and Tablet, and finally they shortened it to Tab. Had nothing to do with Hollywood Tab Hunter or any of those people. It was just a family name that he kind of shortened. And during his working career and all of that, our dad shortened it to C. Tab Murphy. That's what he called himself. So it turned out that in our family, my wife and I had the first grandchild in our Murphy family. And we decided to name him after my dad. and call him Tab.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What is the most important thing that you've learned during your life that you would like to pass on to your grandchildren and your great grandchildren?
Well, I'm not sure I can reduce it to one thing, but I know in my mind it helps to not give up. I mean, even when you're facing difficulties or challenges, don't just give up. I mean, as I think about the enjoyable things that my wife and I have experienced in our life, she's had her career in nursing and healthcare. I've enjoyed the things I've done in the military and also in law. Coming from parents that I think on both sides, I believe I'm right in this, nothing of education beyond high school. And I believe that's, to me, you have to kind of press on and push on if you're meeting obstacles and just not give up and do what you enjoy. I think that's kind of explains the things that I've done in my life. I can speak, I think, for my wife as well. She pursued nursing, as did one of her sisters. I think she enjoyed it a lot. I know she's got fond memories of her time in nursing for a good many years in a hospital setting and at the old group health here in Olympia before Kaiser bought it out. So those are the things in my mind. I don't want to speak to our current stress in our national situation, which is upsetting, but that's something else for another day.
We never did say what today's date is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Today's
know.
date is 17
September 17th.
September 2025.
Okay.
Do you do that in the military? Because I'm a real estate broker, and when people sign, sometimes they put it that way.
The date.
They do it September, or the date, and then the
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the way to do it, and it's hard for me to change lose that habit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you'd like to add?
No, but thank you so much, the two of you, for taking your time and trouble to document these remembrances.
You can add this to your genealogy family search.
Well, you bet.